2 months ago, I was in a discussion with a group of CEOs about leading change. As usual, everyone had a point of view about what works. You need to get the culture right, said someone. It's all about the systems and processes, said another person. Without proper metrics, nothing changes, asserted a third. As I listened to them, I was reminded of Paul O'Neill and how he transformed Alcoa by focusing on just one thing. You see, there is this fascinating concept called Keystone habits that Charles Duhigg talks about in his book, The Power of Habit. The ancient Romans in the first century BC perfected an innovation which allowed them not only to build arch bridges that can smoothen traffic flow, but also build the Pantheon, which is still the world's largest self supporting dome. The magic was the wedge shaped keystone that transformed the ark's outward thrust into downward pressure. It is that one stone at the top, the keystone, that holds all other stones in place. Remove that, and the entire structure collapses. Similarly, in any organization, there are certain habits, when changed, create a cascade of changes. Today's story is about that subject. Welcome back to Stories at Work, a series where I share real stories from across the world that you can use to drive home a business point. Our website, storyworks.in, already has over 100 stories, and we are adding one every week. Let's begin today's story. Now picture this, a ballroom in a New York hotel, October 1987. The who's who of Wall Street has gathered to hear the new CEO of Alcoa speak. The tension in the room is palpable. Paul O'Neill, a 51-year-old former government bureaucrat, virtually unknown in the Wall Street circles, is about to address some of the most influential investors and analysts in the country. Alcoa, one of the world's biggest aluminium manufacturers, has been bleeding money from unprofitable new ventures, and these people want answers. Now, O'Neill looks every inch the CEO that they were hoping for. Trim, dignified, white hair, warm demeanor. You could almost hear collective sigh of relief in the room. And then he starts speaking. I want to talk to you about worker safety, he says. Wait, what? Worker safety? The confusion in the room is visible. One investment analyst turns to another and whispers, did he really say worker safety? Everyone was expecting the usual CEO speak, bottom line, cost cutting, right sizing, and other familiar buzzwords that would reassure them that their investment was safe. But O'Neill continues, seemingly oblivious to their reaction. He says, every year, numerous Alcoa workers are injured so badly that they miss a day of work. Our safety record is better than the general American workforce, especially considering that our employees work with metals that are, 1,500 degrees and machines that can rip a man's arm off. But it's not good enough. I intend to make Alcoa the safest company in America. I intend to go for zero injuries. And just when the audience thinks it can't get any more bizarre, O'Neill pauses and says, before I go any further, I want to point out the safety exits in this room. There are a couple of doors in the back, and in the unlikely event of a fire or other emergency, you should calmly walk out, go down the stairs to the lobby, and leave the building. Remember those moments in meetings where someone says something so unexpected that you can actually hear a pin drop? This was one of those moments. Now, one investor thinking about O'Neill's past stint in Washington mutters under his breath, guy must have done a lot of drugs. The analysts tried desperately to steer the conversation back to familiar territory. What about the capital ratios? Can you talk about inventory levels? But O'Neill remains focused. I'm not certain you heard me, he says. If you want to understand how Alcoa is doing, you need to look at our workplace safety figures. If we bring down injury rates, it won't be because of cheerleading or some nonsense that you hear from other CEOs. It will be because the individuals at this company have agreed to become part of something important. What happens next? Well, many of the analysts rush for their phones, advising their clients to sell Alcoa stock immediately. One of them says, the board has put a crazy hippie in charge. He's going to kill the company. Now, back at the company later, O'Neill stuck to his guns and championed safety as the most important thing. He remained steadfast in his belief that prioritizing employee welfare would ultimately benefit the company's bottom line. One notable incident occurred when a tragic accident led to the unfortunate death of a worker due to unsafe practices. Now, instead of deflecting a blame or minimizing the incident, O'Neill took all the responsibility himself and used it as a catalyst for change within the organization. This incident underscored his commitment to creating a safe workplace and reinforced the importance of transparency and accountability. A year later, Alcoa's profits hit a record high. By the time O'Neill retired 13 years later, the company's annual net income was 5 times larger than when he started. And yes, it had become one of the safest companies in the world. In a later interview, he said, I knew I had to transform Alcoa, but you can't order people to change. So I decided I was going to start focusing on one thing. If I could start disrupting the habits around one thing, it would spread throughout the company. This is the power of a keystone habit. O'Neill didn't try to change everything. He focused on one thing, worker safety. But that one thing was so fundamental that it triggered changes across the organization. To improve safety, managers needed to hear about accidents as soon as they happened. That meant they needed to be in constant communication with their workers. Workers needed to feel comfortable raising issues. That meant that the company culture had to become more open. To track safety improvements, they needed better data collection and sharing systems. That meant improved operational efficiency. So you see how it works? One habit, strategically chosen, created a domino effect of positive changes throughout the organization. Just like the arch, once the keystone is in place, the organization can withstand all the pressures put on it. So here's a question for you. What could be the keystone habit in your organization? What one thing, if changed, could trigger a cascade of other positive changes? Think about it. The answer might surprise you. I hope you enjoyed that story, and if you did, we have over 100 more on our website, storyworks.in. Bye for now. See you next week.